very common question I get asked is, have I always had mental health? And eating disorders within the South Asian communities, like, how can you have an eating disorder? We eat all the time, it's our thing.
Yeah. Hello, so Sandy from Sikh Forgiveness, how are you?
Good, thank you, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Getting there slowly. It's quite early on a Saturday, so Sikh Forgiveness, for those that don't know, what do you guys do?
Sikh Forgiveness is a mental health and wellbeing organisation.
Yeah.
It supports the Sikh and BME community with talking about daily struggles, mental health, positive well-being, communication and language.
Right. Excellent. Okay, cool. I just thought you were just going to carry on listing things.
We have a spectrum of things that we do. So we work across Gurdwara support groups, men and women, universities. We have such a broad group of people that we work with across the nation to be able to deliver mental health support.
How long have you been going for?
Around 18 months.
So 18 months. Would you say you're still relatively new?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
Very, very new, I would say.
What inspired you to actually get into... So, I mean, one of the reasons that we kind of started going as well was because we wanted to bring about attention to these issues that people don't talk about. So your mental health, your domestic violences and stuff. In a community that's, I guess, not very educated about this kind of stuff, what made you want to challenge that?
I think it was the basis of, we live in a Western world. We've travelled, we've experienced, we've developed academically, professionally, but we never get the sense of, can we openly communicate about our feelings and our emotions, especially within our families and our support networks at home.
Yeah.
And I think over time, we have been taught to just get on with it.
Yeah.
So it was important to kind of give back in the sense of seva that doesn't relate just going to the Gurdwara. Talk to younger adults and say to them, what is stressing you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, many of us have lost friends, family members, experienced things that others haven't, and we don't get a chance to express how we feel.
Yeah. And
we don't have that individual that we can connect to, especially maybe in the professional world either.
Mm-hmm.
So without having to take on these conversations, these taboo topics, these stigmas around mental health, no one's going to be able to get the support they need because no one talks about it.
Yeah, I've always found that kind of weird. And my own personal hypothesis, based on literally zero evidence, right, is I think something was lost when people started making the move from South Asia to the Western world. Because when you look back through history, folklore, everything like that. Let's take Punjabi culture for instance. It's always been quite an expressive, you do your poetries and love stories, music, everything. But then I feel like once those two cultures sort of collided, I think something was lost. And one of those things I think was the expressive side. It's kind of like what you said. I think a lot of people, I'm sure people listening, watching, I think everybody in the room, we kind of agree and share that experience of either brushing it under the carpet or just not acknowledging that it's a thing.
I think it's quite difficult as well because nowadays there's so many labels, and mental health is a huge label, not even just from our ancestors, but in the professional world. You think about, if you were to talk about mental health at work, they'd be like, oh, okay, we need to kind of...
Sorry.
Talk about...
I was fucking around with the mic.
Put it in my face.
Yeah, you're trying to be you're like, can you even see my face now?
Do I need to? No.
No, you're good.
It was a sense of, how can we have that conversation with someone that we can relate to? Mental health can be through genetics, what we experienced from whether it's childbirth or through depression, anxiety, it can affect the child. And essentially, the traumas that people bring over from when they're moving countries, we never really talk about that either.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we moved with the partition, we moved from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh to the UK to have a better life, financially, professionally, and we've just had to kind of build ourselves up from nothing to everything. But again, we never had that opportunity to communicate openly,
Yeah.
to listen, to talk, to actually go to someone and say, this is happening, who can I talk to, without judgment.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I do a couple of jokes about mental health as well. And one of them, the premise is like an Asian dude going to like a white therapist. As like, how can a white therapist advise or like understand or empathize with the experience of a first generation immigrant?
It's difficult,
And
hugely difficult.
100%. And I think that's where organisations like yours come in, where there are people that understand the struggle, I guess, that can relate to that story and understand certain elements of it. Whereas somebody who hasn't been through that, how can they really?
I think with mental health or any form of health, it's finding the best shoe that fits you. You cannot experience something and expect one thing to fix it.
Yeah.
And we've kind of been in a situation where we believe that one should fix everything.
Yeah.
One thing will fix everything. One person will fix everything. But it's not necessarily saying that someone who isn't from the South Asian community can't help you. It's understanding what you actually need help for.
Right.
And there has been times where you will come across a psychologist or a doctor or even just another person who won't understand your situation culturally because it's a cultural problem or a cultural issue. But ultimately, is it a cultural problem, and can I strip it back further myself and learn what my mindset or what my condition is at this moment in time?
Right.
So if I was to say something like anxiety or stress, those two can work hand in hand quite well, because anxiety and stress is good for us to a certain level. But if we were to have that conversation with a family member, they'd be like, just get on with it. Everybody has it.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. You know, it's what's your anxiety level, what's my anxiety level, they're different.
And what the thresholds are as well,
Yeah.
like
and it's explaining that to a parent.
yeah.
You know, a parent who has moved countries, or from a male or female perspective, if they've got married and then left their family home, they're like, well, I don't even have my brother next to me anymore. You try and deal with that.
Yeah.
It's like they have this force of trying to fight against, I had this, you have this.
Yeah. And not appreciate that. I think a lot of this stuff's like internal. So I feel like their emotions at that time would have been very similar to what we're going through, even though I'll objectively say I think their situation was obviously tougher, but I feel like the feelings are almost the exact same.
Yeah.
So the anxiety, the stress, etc. It's just that we put it on something else. Like,
Also, the situation is different.
Yeah. No.
So the individual who's comparing, so say a parent, they're seeing it from a situation of we've had to upheave, and the other person is seeing it from I'm struggling with something at school.
Yeah.
And it's being the other person to say, can I have that conversation with you? And it's that education that we want to try and bring into families and charity support groups with the older generation who are seeing friends, families, children isolating themselves because they just don't know how to have that conversation.
How do you go about trying to do that then? Because obviously you've set up an organisation. One of the goals is
education, because majority of our families are professionals. They've been to university, they've gone to school, they've come to this country, they've learned English, they've learned to build their own business. So it's through education. How can we help you understand who is it within your family or within your friends or within your situations at work? What is that relatability that you've experienced that you can share with us?
Yeah.
And it's only when they experience that from someone who's from their own community or from a spectrum where they are giving them the time to learn, can they say, actually, I've seen that through myself. or I've seen that through a friend of mine or a family member.
Yeah.
It's giving them the opportunity, that platform to say, okay, maybe I can have that conversation now.
Right. But practically, how does Sikh Forgiveness go about trying to
So we do that through a variety of support groups. We hold support groups across the country, which is available to anyone and everyone. We go into the Gurdwaras, we go to other support groups that are set up in different parts in cities and towns, and we have those conversations with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially, the individuals who have turned up are aware it's mental health related.
Yeah.
So they want to learn. They want to know, how is it affecting me, or how is it affecting the person that they're wanting to support.
Have you seen a change in attitudes from, let's say, the older generation, maybe even the younger generation?
Massively. In so many different places, so many different individuals, even within my own family and friend circles. I see it through the people that I meet.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're so self-aware now that we're able to give you that platform to say, okay, how can I then support the next generation? And it's really simple things to understand. It's a part of your health.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that we did was be a part of an event which took place last year, and towards the end, when everybody breaks and has catch up and networks, this older gentleman had come over from a Pakistani background, had said, the very common question I get asked is, have I always had mental health?
Right.
And that, for one, is such a humbling question to have, especially from an older generation and from a man, because they're wanting to learn, they're wanting to understand that actually it's not because of something has happened to them. There isn't something wrong with them, that mental health is there. It's in everyone, and it can impact you, but it could also impact you positively.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most amazing things that we get to do with Sikh Forgiveness, is we touch so many different people, which they get to take away and then provide those informations to their friends and family.
Yeah. I think you touched on something there, which is that it was an older man. And I think a lot of South Asian cultures have this like fixation with like masculinity. And I feel like in a weird way, I think it's always like mental health is seen as like quite a feminine thing, whereas I actually think it's the opposite. I feel like it needs to, like, I think the conversation around it needs to change, right? I feel like it needs to be seen as a masculine thing. Like, what could be more masculine than working on yourself to make sure, like, you know, further down the line when you've got, like, you know, a family, a wife and kids, that your own bullshit doesn't impact them.
Yes.
And I don't understand how that's not seen as like a masculine thing.
I think it's because of, there's like a set box that we put men into.
Right.
As in, they have to be a certain way. They have to have a certain emotion. And that's instilled through school or through university or the friendship groups or the family that they're with. They never have the opportunity to share their emotion. And it's only like the suicide rates and any form of stress or financial struggles heavily kind of fall onto the man. And it's more common for a man to take their own life during a period of, I think, 25 to 49 because of the struggles they go through.
It's the leading killer, I think, in that age group. Because
it's a experience that they don't get to share with anybody. They don't get to go home and say, okay, I've had a shitty day at work. This has happened, that has happened.
Yeah.
I just want my own time. They don't have that platform. Not in every area. And neither does a man always have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to a support group. How would they be perceived? How would they be judged? Within their own friend circle, within their school or their university. I mean, we've had conversations with individuals as young as 17, 18, where they're struggling with anxiety, but their family thinks that someone has done something to them. When actually, it's just, they have a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
They just want to talk to someone and say, okay, it's okay, how can we help you?
I see that a lot. I see that so much, where it's like, oh, like, in a black magic, or like something, and you're just like, no, your son's just depressed. Like, fix it. They're like, oh, we're gonna take him to like a fucking shaman, and I'm like, no, take him to a mental health place. Like,
Yes.
please go see a GP.
It's-
You don't need fucking like lighting fucking diva and
Yeah.
shit. You need antidepressants, bro. Get on that Prozac. You need
But that's the thing.
therapy.
It's a learned behaviour, isn't it? They've come from a country where conversations and spirituality and rituals and things like that are heavily embodied into that individual.
Yeah.
Because that's what they practice and that's what they've seen and that's what their evidence is. But for here, when they come over, our evidence is how can we get them support to a GP or to a therapist? They don't believe in that because they don't
Yeah.
see that it works.
When I was in my teens, so I was still at school, and there was a girl that I knew who had like an eating disorder, and she was from like I think she was half Pakistani. Her mum was Pakistani, and her dad was Hindu, I think. So Gujarati, I think he was. And she had an eating disorder, and rather than like get her actual help, she had like something tied around her arm. And I was like, oh, what's that? And she was just like, oh, you know, I've just been like show blah blah blah. Like we knew each other fairly well, so she was like, oh, I've got this like eating disorder thing going on. And she was like, I told my parents, and they took me to some like fucking.
So they give, I think, I can't
Dude,
remember what
like,
it's called, but I think some people call it a taveed.
Yeah.
Or some people would wear like a black thread or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
to
yeah,
keep
yeah.
nazar away.
It was-
Or keep the spirits away or something like that. But they're not, because of lack of education, lack of awareness, the only thing that they know is to, okay, let's take them to an elder and see if they can cure them.
Yeah.
And eating disorders within the South Asian communities, like, how can you have an eating disorder? We eat all the time. It's our thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like talking about alcohol within Punjabi communities. Like, that's your thing. You guys are known for it.
Yeah, and she was just like, bro, we want to evolve.
Yeah.
We want to change.
Yeah. It's like, well, actually, it's not something that we do. It's not a label that is stuck to us. Everybody is individual. And those are really hard topics for our community to kind of take on board. And especially for men as well. I did a presentation not too long ago about alcohol. And one of the things that I did was to incorporate like alcohol-free wine. But actually, because of the way it's fermented, it's still got alcohol in it. So it would still affect someone who doesn't drink at all. So the way fruit is fermented,
Yeah.
it has a percentage of alcohol within
Yeah.
that ingredient.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you see a lot of like addiction, like people seeking help for addiction?
Yes.
I obviously the Punjabi community. I
Not
think
just in the Punjabi community, and I think there's so many different levels to addiction nowadays. You've got gambling, drinking, substance misuses. It's when they're willing to talk about it. And unfortunately, we're kind of in a situation where we have so many acts in place that we can only help them so far. And until they take that step forward to say, okay, I'm willing to do this, can like the NHS or GP or even family members step in and say, okay, how can we do this?
Yeah.
There's so many different levels to addiction. It's just, what is it that we can give you to give you that support?
Yeah. And again, this is kind of where I come into it. I've personally, just anecdotally, I've seen an increase in the number of like addiction charities that have been popping up that specialize in South Asian cultures, especially Punjabi and the drinking. That's something that, like, I think the BBC did articles about it. And like when you read some of these case studies, it's like behaviours that we would perceive as normal. Like there was an article I was reading where the dude was going to weddings, and he was like, the last like 6 family weddings I've got no recollection of. And you're like, bruv.
But the thing is, it's no different for women. It's literally
Really?
no different for women. We're in a culture where we have access and exposure to alcohol at a very early age, especially within the Asian community.
Yeah.
It's not frowned upon now. You know, you go to weddings, you go to parties, university, it's there. It's reduced prices. It's like, why not? I'm going to try it. No one's here. I can do this. It's when it goes out of control and you can't control it. And you're going out, people aren't looking at you because, oh, you're a girl, you can't drink. Equal rights, why not? But when weddings are happening or occasions and there's parties and women are allowed to drink and are having those one too many, they're just seeing them as having a good time. But do you see them every day? No.
True.
So we've had a lovely lady who did a podcast with us, and she also did supported us during a workshop we did in Birmingham for alcohol awareness. And she suffered with a form of alcohol addiction, heavily drinking every day, but was exposed to her through family.
Yeah.
So it was nothing that was any different to her or her family. So them seeking support or being able to have that stepping stone to saying, yeah, okay, it's me too.
Yeah.
We have equal rights in many things, as well as in the amount of units a woman can have. It's both the same. Men and women can equally have 14 units.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. The women are so much smaller. I'm
Still
assuming
the
their
same.
livers are smaller as well. Hey man, you got to think about the practice. Like maybe I should be, maybe I should be the leading alcohol. Like no, you drink less, you're smaller. Okay.
No, but the thing is, it's equal. So the support is not always there, and it's heavily frowned upon. If you were to say, or if a female was to come out and say, "Oh, I have an alcohol addiction," they'd be like, "Why? Why are you drinking so much? Don't you have children? Don't you have a family?
Yeah.
Why do you need to drink so much?" But then you're exposed to a professional world where,
That's the culture.
yes,
Drinks
especially
after happy
in
hours.
London, there's happy hours, there's like lunchtime meetings, drinking, out in the evening after work, or if you're in an industry where they do drink a lot or you're having a lot of meetings, it's like, oh, have a drink.
I always kind of question it as well. There's like specific people that I've got like on my Instagram from uni, from social circles and stuff, where like I like a party, right? But oh my god, like I look at their stories and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing every week? Like,
Yeah.
what? Have a word with yourself, bro. You're like 27 now. Like, chill out.
There are some scary stories that are out there. I mean, I've had to support someone when they've nearly passed out and unconscious, and it's not the greatest thing you want to do.
Oh, everybody's been there.
But
It's not.
I think the only thing that we were able to do was to make sure that they were still breathing and to get them the support. But they never had the support from their family. And this wasn't from an Asian culture either.
White girls like to party as
It
well,
wasn't
man.
even a girl.
Oh.
The judgment's there already. It was actually a young guy who had far too many to drink. He practically nearly passed out in the middle of the road, so you help him out, of course. But for his friends and family, it was normal.
Fuck.
It was normal.
Yeah.
The taxi wouldn't take him home. Paramedics were late. Luckily, his mum was a nurse, but it was no different for her.
It's difficult though, because like I've got friends that who I'd class as like close friends, and having those conversations around alcohol is difficult, isn't it? It's like it is. It's because if that person's not willing to be like, look, like yeah, I think you're right, and you can't baby somebody.
No, and that's the thing with many things with regards to mental health is you have to be able to give them that control back. Because ultimately they're struggling with their feelings and their emotions themselves.
Yeah.
And someone enforcing a routine or a change for them is not something that they want to do.
Yeah. I always view it as like working out or dieting. Like it will never go successfully until you yourself, like somebody could be telling you like, hey man, you need to get back in the gym, you're getting like fat, like stop eating so much. Until you make the decision of, okay, cool, I want to do this.
It's your mindset.
Yes, yeah.
Definitely is the mindset.
One other point I was thinking was self-reflection. I think self-reflection needs to be a bigger thing in the South Asian communities. I feel like you have to have those conversations with yourself before any like discernible action takes place. But you always need to be, because I was in that position myself. I think I was partying a lot, especially through like uni and probably like a year or two after. I was partying a lot, drinking a lot. But then I had those conversations just like kind of with myself, and I think that's probably what helped the most.
It is about learning. I think one of the things that we've been able to kind of learn over the few years is you have to do a lot of self-reflection, not just within your workplace or your family or anything like that. You have to learn your routines, your daily needs, your requirements, and see it in the sense of, okay, if I was to go to work and I had a schedule or a meeting or something that I needed to do, why wouldn't I do that in my personal life? Is my health not more important than me being able to deliver at work?
Yeah.
And that's not what we're given the tools for. When we go to university, it's like our schedule is revision, study, this lecture, that lecture. I've got to make sure I get out of bed and get to my lecture. But then we never kind of practice that when we leave university.
Yeah.
And it kind of spirals out of control. So self-reflection and learning about what you need as a person, what your drives are, what your passions are, what your goals are they achievable? Having the steps and the tools in order to do that, and what truly makes you happy and content.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tools out there where you can do that. You know, it's going to workshops, learning new things. There's a lot of free things out there that you can do. You know, learn about mental health, learn about your community.
Yeah.
I mean, from a Sikh perspective, we heavily do seva within our community, but it's always perceived as we'll do seva in the Gurdwara. But no, your seva is to everyone and anyone.
Yeah.
And our seva isn't just to the Sikh community. We would help anybody in any situation if we can.
How do you tie those two things together then? So religion and, let's say, something that's a fairly new topic, 20, 30 years. Really, I think it's only really kicked up in the last like 5 or 10 years. How do you tie religion that's like this old, stoic, almost inchangeable thing, and then a new topic like mental health? How do you bring those two together?
Perspective of the mindset. Sikhi is a religion that is about always learning, always being on a journey. And essentially, we've never had the opportunity to have those discussions within our family. And over time, people have lost their faith within their sangat, within their community, because of more cultural situations in society, of having to brush it under the carpet. But if you were to listen, truly listen to Bani, truly listen to the words, the meaning, the understanding, you will learn that it's all about who you are and what you're able to do, and what your mindset is and what your perspective is.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that we've came into communication with have always said that they've never felt the support from the community. They felt a bit pushed out. But after a while of seeking support with us and giving them the opportunity, the voice, the platform, on more than one occasion, they have come back and always said that I've never been a part of my faith or been welcomed back into my faith more than I have now. And that's because they've been able to gain perspective on their mindset.
Right.
And learn about what is their purpose. Yeah.
I think I think tying those two things together is really important, especially when we talk about raising awareness, like I think specifically with older generations, of showing them that, you know, you're not going against the grain with those two things. It's very much within almost the remit of the religion. And you're seeing that not just in Sikhism, you're seeing it everywhere. So, like, you're seeing Islamic charities pop up that are mental health related, Hindu charities, like also even Christian, like everything.
There is elements in every religion that has some form of stigma or taboo surrounded and attached to mental health. But essentially, there's also the positivity and the element to be reattached to your faith through meditation, through understanding, through learning what your religion or your faith is, what your belief is, because everybody's belief is different.
Yeah.
to an element. Whether you're still even in the Sikh community, we all believe something different.
Yeah.
You know, there's an element of something that we have a different opinion on or a different agreement on, but that doesn't mean that your faith is any better or any bolder than the others.
Yeah.
It's what you believe, what you feel. It's how you're spiritually connected. And when people are individually going through that journey, it's how they're spiritually connected to their guru or their God or who they believe in. It might just be something that they believe in within the universe.
Yeah.
It's you as an individual who's going to take that step.
Yeah. I think more needs to be made of the personal responsibility that you have over your own mental health. We did a podcast a few episodes ago where we were talking about like my journey through it and all that. And like it was probably one of the best things I've done. Like because and we were talking off camera about the positive side of mental health. Where it's like you come through the other side and you've got all of these techniques now where it's like, oh, okay, cool. I can like spot the signs of like me not coping well. You know, I can nip it in the bud earlier rather than let it get to a stage where it's like affecting me or like the people around me and stuff. And I think that's the positive side of it.
I think the thing is, once you become self-aware, instead of someone else telling you something's wrong or something's changed or something's different, when you're self-aware, you make that step. And that's when it changes. That's when your mindset really, really makes that step into the journey that you want it to do. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be a straight line. There's always going to be ups and downs. You're going to have your low days. But you get that first step of, okay, I've spoken to someone. That someone's then shown me a leaflet. That someone's then taken me out. That someone's then introduced me to somebody else. Now I've got 2 people to talk to.
Yeah.
It spirals into a group, a network,
A support network.
Communication of these people all can help me, and now I'm getting somewhere.
Yeah.
But ultimately, those people will then also support you if anything was to relapse.
True.
And that's when it comes into control of how is the things that Sikh Forgiveness does or all the other charities do out there, how are they supporting? What are they doing? They're giving you that voice, that element of we're here for you. We can relate to you. We've had our own mental health as well, but we know your mental health is different. Your journey is different. How can we support you? What is it that we can do for you?
Yeah.
Because your health is a priority for us.
It's an important message, I think.
And essentially, they may not only just need a therapist, they might need an exercise regime, they might need a support group, they might need to learn coping techniques, mechanisms in order to help them grow as a person or grow stronger, or learn if I'm having a panic attack or I'm going through severe anxiety, what is my go-to? And everybody has those.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it goes back to like what you were saying off screen. It's like mental health's a spectrum.
Yes.
So it's like you've got your like quote unquote like minor issues where it's like, you know, let's say it's situational, like you're panicking about a certain thing.
So like speaking on stage can be quite fearful for some people.
Yes.
So they have anxiety, or they'll be like, oh, I'm just going to vomit over here or something like that, which is what most people do.
I know a comedian that needs to shit every time.
But everybody has their thing. So it's like, okay, so that's good anxiety. There's good stresses. But when it's on a spectrum of, okay, I need support, I know I'm going to have a panic attack, how am I going to do that? And people who are aware of it, those who are trained, especially being able to have more people who are trained, say, in mental health first aiding.
Yeah.
You know, there is something there that's like that. There is loads of other courses where businesses, charities, individuals can learn more about mental health. And that's how to aid someone in a situation they may have not come across. Mm. So we need to be able to learn those things and be able to give that support, because not all mental health is bad. It is good for you to some extent.
Yeah.
But it's how you cope with it. What's your coping technique? Because someone might like going to the gym to release stress. Someone might like baking.
Eating.
Drinking.
I'm fucking right.
But drinking isn't bad for you. It's when when you're drinking just because you're drinking, when we had the conversation
That's
earlier,
the best kind.
is when someone's coming home every day from work and the only thing that's on their mind is where my next drink's going to be.
Yeah.
Where's the nearest shop I can get it to? Can I have it in my drawer at work? Or can I have it in my bag and not get stopped? Is someone going to smell it from me if I have a sip in the morning?
Yeah.
That's when it's out of control, and it's something that they're not managing with.
Yeah.
And having those tools to have that conversation with someone. Sometimes you have to be bold.
Take the initiative.
Yeah, you have to be bold and say, do you have a drinking problem? Are you having suicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
Is there something I need to be worried about? Because sometimes that can shock that person.
And it can get that ball rolling as well for them to consider
definitely,
it themselves.
100%.
What's in store for the future then with Sikh Forgiveness?
We have so many things. Our main aim at the moment is to kind of reduce that gap between communication and language barriers, of understanding what mental health is, whether that's through speech, through small courses, workshops, podcasts. It's giving someone else that step forward to say, okay, this is a real person who's actually sharing their journey with me, who I don't even know, but I feel the same as they do.
Yeah.
And they have that person. So our aim has always been to help that one life, that one Jan, that one thing that we can do for you is to be there for you. How can we do it?
Right.
And if we were to do that every day, we would help how many? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I was to base it with Sikh Forgiveness, we do 10 projects in a year. That's 10 people that I would never have met. It's 10 people that those people would have never have met. And then the 15 people within that group that would have never met anybody else.
Yeah. You just keep expanding. It snowballs. I think one of my favourite things that you guys do are the podcasts in Punjabi.
Oh, thank you.
They're
really good.
I think, but I think they're obviously the content's good, but I think that's exactly kind of what's needed.
Yeah.
Because the way that mental health became such a focus point in Western culture was through conversations. And it's like, if there's a language barrier there, and those conversations aren't being had in Punjabi, Urdu, Hindi, whatever, then that conversation is never going to be had in that community, is it?
The thing is, we've kind of, and if we were to take it back really back into the day, majority of our families were meeting every weekend, having a cup of tea, having samosa or, biscuits or whatever it is, sitting around having a chat, and you'd see the kids running around and you know if something was wrong.
Yeah.
We don't have that as much anymore because we have what most of us would say is a life.
Yeah.
We want to go out, we want to go to theatre, we want to go to cinema, we want to see our friends. We don't have those conversations anymore. People don't see what we're going through.
Yeah.
And the only time we actually see people now, or especially close family or friends, is when there's an occasion. And
nobody wants to have mental health talks on occasions.
No,
Imagine it's a fucking wedding.
But no, it's not even that. It's just like, oh, hey, how are you? Okay, yeah, that's great, thanks. Okay, I'll see you later. Catch up, ring me, okay? And that's it.
Yeah.
It's never usually like, okay, come around my house, let's have a catch up. It just never happens.
Yeah, and you're never in those situations naturally where those conversations can spark. Like most of my relationships with older family members is them just forwarding WhatsApp videos to me now.
The family WhatsApp groups.
Yeah. It's always that fucking.
Make sure you send the happy Diwali or happy Bandi Jor, and that's it.
It's always or there's like some fucking video from India with like a really bad Bhangra track on the back
from TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. And those are basically family relations now.
But yeah, they just don't have that conversation. I mean, I'm quite lucky. I've got a big family. I'm the youngest of 4, and my nephews and nieces are just everything. But I've been quite lucky where my nephews and nieces do talk to me about anything, and they're not shy about anything. And I have the ability to say to them, is there anything you want to talk to me about?
Yeah.
But ultimately, they also ask the questions as well, as in, because they're in a world of, do you want to be successful? Do you want to know what this is? Have you learned coding at school? And this, that, the other. And it's like, okay, but are you happy?
Yes.
we have the ability where we can say to the next generation is, don't see it in the sense of it's going to give me the most money. See it in the sense of, is that going to make you happy? Is that where you want to be? Plan it, learn about it. And if it is, then okay, let's support you. If it isn't, then okay, let's reflect on what it is that you do want to do.
Yeah.
And giving them the tools to do that.
Yeah. And that's never like taught at school and stuff. I think that needs to come from family, which is, you know, your focus should be happiness.
Yeah.
Rather than...
But also learning about really simple things like how to manage your finances and how to manage, you know, day-to-day life. I mean, buying a house nowadays is like you have to take out 5 mortgages in order to do it first.
Yeah.
But we're never taught that.
Yeah.
You know, the drive is just education. And once education is done, it's then get a really good job, do the good job, then get married, then after marriage, buy the house, have the children. That's it. That's your life.
Ugh, hell.
But they never talk about, okay, if you don't get the job, if you don't get the job, then what do you do? If you don't get into the university, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Like we met a lovely group of students the other day, and they all had their ambitions in what they wanted to do, but ultimately they all had their own journeys, they all had their own path, and they never really actually championed their talents.
Yeah.
So it was like the ability to be a graphic designer, or to sketch really good drawings, or to write poems, or to be like a fashion influencer, and all these other things. There's so many other things that people can do that just doesn't have to be the doctor, be the dentist, be the accountant. Why can't you do both?
I'm with you. Last point before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about it. You briefly mentioned this. I'm not actually sure what the response is going to be to this, but you mentioned you do, was it sex workshops?
We have covered projects about relating sex, but it's mainly on the senses of, do we know what it's about, how we're educating people.
So it's like sex education, but for like brown people.
Kind of.
Absolutely incredible.
But ultimately, it's also about giving the education of being able to say no.
Oh, consent training?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. That's less funny. I can't really joke about that.
Only because
I thought you were like going around teaching people how to give handjobs.
Please tell me you're not going to put this on. They're going to be like, Sikh Forgiveness, have seeker attached to it, you know, and then he's like, yes, sex.
No, I think it's... No. So I do think it's fucking important, right?
What we plan to do within this year is to have more conversations about sex, purely because we don't have that conversation. It's always the bees and the birds, and you have it at school.
Yeah.
But when we're going into university, people are exposed to it. They don't have that conversation. They don't know who to go to.
Yeah.
We don't have those conversations about abortions. We don't have those conversations about, I had sex, but I didn't want to. I didn't really know what my first time was. There's so many other things that we don't really have to talk about. But then there's also so many other groups and charities that can help support those conversations that they can talk to and get resources from.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it just boils down to what's going to be beneficial for these communities.
Yeah.
And it's beneficial for people to be aware of things like consent and, you know...
Yes.
Grooming. I thought you said women. I was like, I doubt Sandy's there just like, look, this is how you pull on Tinder, all right? I doubt that's what the workshops are about.
No, but it's making them more self-aware with like the women that we do meet and the men that we meet, is getting them to talk about it in the sense that, okay, if you needed support, who would you go to? Don't go by yourself. Don't go to a clinic by yourself. You go to the pharmacy by yourself. Do you know what you're putting into your body?
Yeah.
You know, having those conversations. But ultimately, it comes down to also is that we're here. We have people from back home come over here, but they don't know. And are we adhering to whatever they want us to? Yeah. And then it falls into the bracket of sexual abuse, domestic violence. You're not adhering to what I want you to. There's so many other elements of where it can stem out of control if you just don't have that conversation.
Yeah.
And again, it falls into health. If you don't know what your body is needing or telling you, how are you going to go to somebody and say, okay, I have this problem?
Yeah, I was reading some mad shit about how like attitudes towards like periods.
Yes.
So
there's amazing charity out there called Binti Period.
Yeah,
they're amazing. They do so many things.
It was one of their posts I was reading about. I need to get in touch with them to bring them on, by the way. But I was reading something about like women were sharing their experiences of like attitudes towards periods, and there was one experience where like their family wouldn't let them cook when they were on their period because they were like, you've got bad like spirits and shit.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what? You're unclean for like 5 days. I was like, what?
The thing is we've come across young girls who have come through to Seek Forgiveness and said, I can't tell my dad that I'm on my period, but I'm on my period. And we can't say period, because that means I'm officially a woman now. And they don't want me to be. And some people can start their period when they're like 9 years old.
Yeah.
And for a parent or from someone who's not used to a conversation like that, they're like, well, you can't be a woman at 9. You're a child.
Yeah. Mm.
You know, there's so many other conversations that impacts that individual growing up.
And then where do they turn to to learn about health? What's healthy, what's not? Like, you know, I would, again, I'm going to be like crude, but if I woke up one day and my like dick was bleeding and I had no idea. No, I'm being for real. Like, and I had like no idea like why this was happening.
Yeah.
That must be such like a terrifying experience, but then not being able to turn to your family.
Yes.
It's fucking mental.
But not even be able to have that conversation, just say, okay, I'm on my period, leave me alone.
Yeah.
You know, our moods do change. You know, how we feel, what we do, our bodies change. But not being able to have that conversation at home can be hard.
Mm.
And there's girls in the UK that are still feeling it. Yeah. We shouldn't have to. It's not something that... isn't anything wrong with us. It's not something that we've done wrong in order to have a period. It's natural.
Yeah. I think that's like quite a poetic note to end on. So we'll pop all of your links and stuff in the description for the videos. Seek Forgiveness. Sandy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.